It wasn't a shimmer of light that caught my eye, but a glint of heavy, polished metal on the dark mahogany of her dresser. I was putting away laundry when I saw it, lying next to her jewelry box. A single, expensive-looking cufflink. It wasn't mine. I'm an architect. My daily wear is a practical watch and a wedding band. This was something else entirely platinum, with a small inset onyx stone. I picked it up. It felt solid, weighted, and then I saw the initials, elegantly engraved, MV. My mind didn't race. It compiled. Marcus Vance, the senior vice president at the PR firm where my wife Eva worked. I'd met him a few times at the corporate galas she insisted we attend. He had the kind of predatory handshake that lingered too long, and he wore cufflinks exactly like this one. Eva was still asleep. Last night had been another one of those galas. She'd come home late, smelling of champagne and victory, talking about a successful campaign launch. I looked from the cufflink in my hand to her sleeping form. An architect's mind works with structures, seeking the simplest explanation that supports the weight of the facts. And the simplest structure here was an affair. For a moment, I tried to design an alternative blueprint. Maybe Marcus dropped it. Maybe she found it and picked it up for him. But in our bedroom? At 2 a.m.? No. Those were weak supports, destined to collapse under the slightest pressure. The truth was in the foundation, and the foundation of our marriage had a detail I couldn't ignore. 2 years ago, after our second child was born, I had a vasectomy. That procedure was supposed to be the final load-bearing wall in our family's design. 2 kids, a boy and a girl, a perfectly balanced structure. It meant she didn't need birth control. So why would she risk an affair with a man who could get her pregnant? The question was wrong. I was looking at the problem from my perspective. From her perspective, the perspective of a PR professional who crafts narratives for a living, the vasectomy wasn't a wall. It was a firewall. It made me safe. It meant any accidents couldn't be traced back to me. My blood ran cold. The cufflink wasn't just evidence of an affair. It was a clue that pointed to a much deeper, more fundamental flaw in the entire construction of my life. Eva and I had been together for 9 years. I was the architect who designed our physical world, our home, our finances, our future. She was the PR director who designed our social one, our friends, our reputation, our perfect couple brand. We were a team, or so I thought. Our children, James 5 and Sonia 2, were the centerpieces of the project. An impeccable family, a flawless design, or so the marketing materials claimed. I placed the cufflink back on the dresser, exactly where I found it. Confrontation without data is just noise. An architect doesn't start swinging a sledgehammer without knowing which walls are cosmetic and which are holding up the roof. I needed blueprints. I needed to see the hidden schematics of her other life. My mind shifted from husband to project manager. The first, most terrifying question wasn't just who and for how long. It was a foundational query. Were these children even mine? I went to my office and closed the door. My emotions, the betrayal, the pain, the anger, I compartmentalized them. They were project risks to be managed later. First, I needed to conduct a full structural analysis. Online, I began ordering the tools for my site survey. First, DNA analysis kits. Testing the children would be simple. I often put them to bed before Eva got home. Next, surveillance equipment, small discrete audio recorders for her car and her designer handbag, and several micro cameras for the house. I needed to perform a full acoustic and visual audit. Finally, the most critical tool, a phone cloning kit. I needed access to her communication server, her texts, her emails, her call logs. I ordered a new, identical phone to serve as the clone. Over the next few days, as the packages arrived at my architecture firm under a project code name, I watched her. Nothing changed. Our sex life was standard. She never rushed to the shower. There were no suspicious smells. It was a perfect performance. She was either innocent or she was a master of hiding the structural decay. The packages arrived on Friday. DNA kits, recorders, cameras, the phone. I was ready to begin the demolition. That day, I left the office early. The au pair was feeding the children. I let her finish while I installed the cameras, my new observation points. I calculated the angles, the sight lines, the blind spots, one in the living room, one in the bathroom, and one in our bedroom, with a perfect, unobstructed view of the stage where she performed the role of my loving wife. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was the architect of her downfall, and I was about to find every single crack in her beautiful facade. That evening, I began the structural survey. The au pair was with James, so I took Sonia to her room. As I read her a bedtime story, I carefully took a cheek swab and placed it in my pocket. Once she was asleep, I went to James's room. The au pair was still reading to him. I offered to take over, letting her go home early. She gratefully agreed. A few minutes later, I had James's sample. The process was efficient, almost clinical. I packaged their samples along with one of my own and dropped them in the mailbox for morning pickup. The lab promised results within 48 business hours. Wednesday would be the day I'd know if the foundation of my life was sound or built on sand. Eva arrived home on schedule. We went through the motions of a normal evening, a performance of a marriage. She talked about her day. I talked about mine. Neither of us was really listening to the other. When she went to the shower, I executed the next phase. I installed the audio recorders in her car and handbag and cloned her primary phone. A quick scan of the clone showed nothing incriminating. No messages, no emails. The public-facing servers were clean. She was either innocent or extremely careful. The weekend passed with a deceptive sense of normalcy. We had sex both mornings. It felt less like intimacy and more like a scheduled maintenance check. She received no suspicious calls or texts. On Monday, I told her I was working from home, a perfect opportunity to review the surveillance data. I pulled the drives from the cameras. The footage from the living room was useless. But the bedroom camera delivered the first critical piece of evidence. On Saturday night, while I was downstairs, she'd emerged from the shower and texted someone. It wasn't on the phone I had cloned. This confirmed it. She was running a secure secondary network. I watched the footage again, this time like an architect studying a blueprint. Her movements were precise. She finished her message, walked to the antique heating vent near the floor, released a hidden latch, and placed the phone inside. The vent was a brilliant dead-drop location, a forgotten piece of the house's original infrastructure. I immediately checked it. The phone was gone. She must use it as a secure storage location at home, taking it with her when she leaves. I reviewed the footage from that morning. I saw her retrieve the phone from the vent and slip it into her bag before leaving for work. I needed that phone. That evening, I watched her every move. She came home, dropped her bag by the door, and went through her usual routine. After dinner, she went upstairs to shower. I checked her bag. The second phone wasn't there. She must have taken it with her, hiding it in the vent as soon as she went upstairs. But she didn't know, or didn't care, that on the other side of that same vent was our daughter's bedroom. Quietly, I slipped into Sonia's room. On my hands and knees, I reached into the vent from her side. My fingers brushed against the cold metal casing. I had it. I took it to my office, and in less than 2 minutes, the cloning process was complete. I returned the device to its hiding place just as I heard the shower stop. When Eva entered Sonia's room a moment later, she found me sitting by the bed, stroking our daughter's hair. "Something wrong?" she asked quietly. "No," I whispered, just reminding myself how lucky I am to have these two. It was the most honest lie I'd ever told. She smiled. "You're a softie, Alex." The next day, in my office, I finally accessed the clone of the second phone, and that's when the entire structure of my world collapsed. The sound of my office manager's intercom was a distant buzz as I sat staring at the messages, the floor dropping out from under me. Eventually, Clara, my office manager, knocked briefly before entering. Clara was the steel framework that held my company together. In her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, she was fiercely competent and loyal. Our relationship had always been strictly professional, but that loyalty had been tested. A former partner, a man who couldn't stand a woman who wouldn't fall for his charms, had relentlessly harassed her. When he gave me an ultimatum, her or him, I bought him out. Clara had stayed. She poked her head in and saw my face. She immediately left, and I heard her firmly telling someone in the outer office that I was unavailable for the rest of the day. A moment later, she returned, closed and locked the door, and sat in the chair opposite me. She slid a box of tissues across the desk. "Tell me," was all she said. Her voice wasn't soft. It was solid. A foundation. I slid the phone to her. The messages were all there. Texts between Eva and a contact saved only as MV. No full names, but it was him. Marcus Vance. They talked about secret meetings, about sex, about details. Only a lover should know. Things about Eva I thought were mine alone. I was never mentioned. It was as if I didn't exist in their world. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was an erasure. Clara didn't need to scroll for long. She saw the details, the references to a small birthmark on Eva's inner thigh, the cute sounds she made during sex, things that felt like they were stolen directly from the private blueprints of my marriage. They weren't just lovers. They were long-term partners in a conspiracy that had rendered me irrelevant. In their private world, I wasn't even a ghost. I simply didn't exist. "Do you know who MV is?" Clara asked, her voice still all business. I nodded mutely. "Marcus Vance, senior VP at her firm." "How did you know for sure?" My voice was hollow as I told her everything. Starting with the cufflink, the story flowed out of me, a torrent of facts and deductions I'd been holding back. The whole time, she just sat there, her gaze unwavering. At some point, I realized she was holding my hand, her grip firm and steady. It was the first time we had ever touched. "You need more data," she said, her tone decisive. "The DNA results come back on Wednesday. Can you hold it together until then?" "I don't know," I admitted. She nodded once, already formulating a plan. "We have an urgent structural issue with the foundation of the Portland project. You need to be on site." Immediately, she took my phone, typed a quick message to Eva, and showed it to me before sending. "Emergency in Portland. Foundation problem. Have to go sort it out. Back Thursday. Love you." The reply was almost instant. "Okay. Let me know when you land. See you when you're back. XX." Clara stared at the XX for a second, her lips curling into a look of pure contempt. She handed me my phone, then took out her own. "Diana," she said into the phone. "It's Clara." "Yes. Thank you. Are you free this afternoon?" "Excellent. See you then." She hung up. "Go wash your face, Alex," she ordered, her businesslike tone a welcome anchor in my freefall. "You have a meeting." It was oddly comforting not to have to think, to let someone else take over the project management of my own collapse. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To meet an old friend of mine," she said. "She's an expert in demolition." Diana, it turned out, was Clara's best friend and the most feared divorce attorney in the city. Clara had retained her during her own divorce, after discovering her husband was cheating. Clara laid out the situation for Diana with the cold precision of an architect presenting a structural analysis, while I sat there in a state of stupor, feeling like I was watching a documentary about someone else's life. Diana listened, absorbing every detail. When Clara was finished, She turned her sharp, intelligent eyes on me. "Alex," she said, her voice cutting through my haze. I must have looked a million miles away. I felt a sharp sting on my cheek. Clara had slapped me, not hard, but enough to bring me back. I blinked, startled. I saw a flicker of amusement in Diana's eyes, quickly replaced by focus. "Alex," she said again. I nodded. "Do you have any idea what you want to do about this?" At those words, the architect in me woke up. The part of my brain that sees problems not as emotional crises, but as design flaws that need to be corrected. "The current structure is compromised beyond repair," I said, my voice flat. "It needs to be demolished. Completely." Clara smirked. For the first time that day, I saw a genuine, almost vicious smile on her face. "Okay," Diana said, leaning forward. "I understand the sentiment. Unfortunately, demolition in the literal sense is illegal. However, we have several options for a controlled, strategic deconstruction. Let's review the blueprints." She laid out the options with chilling clarity. Option 1. The facade. You do nothing. You pretend you don't know. You continue to live in a beautifully designed house that is rotting from the inside. Not recommended. Option 2. The amicable split. We file for irreconcilable differences. We divide everything 50/50. The house, your firm, your savings. She makes less than you, so you will pay alimony while she and Marcus Vance build their new life with your money. Also not recommended. I shook my head. "Good," Diana said, a wolfish grin spreading across her face. "Then we have option 3, the condemnation." She leaned back. "We go nuclear. We sue for adultery. Once the DNA results confirm it, we sue for birth certificate fraud. We sue Marcus Vance for alienation of affection and for every single dollar you spent raising his children. We sue her company for violating their fraternization policy, since he's a senior executive. We provide his wife with a full, documented portfolio of their affair. We make it public. We inform every friend, relative, and professional contact. We don't just win. We leave nothing but a crater where her reputation used to be." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And while we do that, we protect your assets. An architect understands the importance of a solid foundation, right? So we'll build you a new one. Your firm, your savings, your future. We move it all into a new structure, something the court can't touch. We'll leave the old condemned building for her to pick through the rubble." My mind raced, processing her words like a complex architectural schematic. Option 1 was unthinkable. Option 2 was a surrender I would not make. I had spent my life designing and building stable structures. I would not let her and her lover tear mine down and then hand them half the materials to build their own. "Option 3, I said, my voice clear for the first time that day. "Condemnation." Diana's smile widened. "Excellent. I'll begin drafting the preliminary paperwork. In the meantime, we need more evidence. Who, when, where? Clara," she said, turning to my office manager. "Can you keep this phone? I have a feeling it's going to be very useful." I nodded and handed it to her. Clara and I left Diana's office. She didn't take me home. She took me to a quiet, discreet hotel. "You can't go back to the house," she said, booking me a suite. "It's a compromised site. Go shower. Order room service. I'll be back later with a change of clothes and your laptop." She had taken complete control. I was acting mechanically, my world collapsing around me while I was being managed like a client. 9 years, down the drain. What hurt the most was that I, the man who saw every detail, every flaw in a blueprint, had been completely blind to the rot in my own foundation. How? Who was she? Was it always Marcus? Or was I just the convenient, stable structure she used to house her other life? I looked at the hotel minibar, the neat rows of tiny bottles promising a quick, easy demolition of my consciousness. I was reaching for one when Clara entered the room. "Don't even think about it," she said, her voice sharp. "I need an architect, not a wrecking ball. You don't drown your sorrows when a building's foundation is cracked. You draw up a new set of blueprints. We need to plan." "Plan?" I asked, my voice heavy with gloom. "I had a plan, Clara. A perfect design, a loving wife, 2 beautiful children. Now look at it. A cheating wife, children who might not even be mine. My whole life is a condemned building, and you want me to start drawing?" She looked at me for a long moment. I expected sympathy, maybe even a hug. Instead, she glanced at her watch. "Okay," she said. "All business. The pity party is over." "Alex, how many times has a project hit a snag? A zoning permit denied, a supplier defaulting, a client changing the entire design brief mid-construction? What does that have to do with anything?" "How many times?" she insisted. "I don't know. 100? I said. "There was the time the city lost our environmental impact report for the downtown high-rise. The time the steel supplier for the bridge project went bankrupt a week before delivery." "Okay," she cut me off. "And at what point, during any of those crises, did you sit down, put your head in your hands, and give up?" "That was different." "Why?" she asked. "What was different?" "Then, I had something to fight for," I said. "I had a family that depended on me." "You still have a family," she countered, her voice like steel. "A much larger one. 141 employees and their families depend on you to keep this firm standing. Your partners are brilliant architects, but you're the one who knows how to run the business. If you go down, the firm goes down. Do you think Eva cares about them? If she gets half of your shares, she'll sell them to the highest bidder and you'll lose control. And we both know who's waiting to buy. Our biggest competitor will own everything you've ever built. Do you want that?" I stared at her. She was right. I had worked too long and too hard to let my life's work be sold off for parts. I needed to get my own house in order, to secure my future. If the kids were mine, I'd make sure their foundations were solid. But as for Eva, she had designed her own demolition. I could grieve for our marriage later, after I ensured everything else was safe. The fog in my mind cleared, replaced by the cold, clean lines of anger and determination. I sat down with Clara, and we began to draw up new plans. I was going to design a fortress. We spent the rest of the evening outlining the strategy. At first, I suggested selling my shares to my partners, but Clara rejected the idea. She didn't trust them to hold the line against a hostile takeover. I needed to maintain control. The solution she proposed was brilliant, and it fit my profession perfectly. "We don't hide the money, Alex," she said. "We reinvest it. We'll find an undervalued commercial property, a fixer-upper with good bones. You'll liquidate everything, cash out your 401k, leverage all the equity in the house, and pour it into acquiring and renovating that building." The house was in my name only. Eva hadn't been working when we bought it. "We'll structure the purchase through a multi-layered LLC," Clara continued. "You'll be the managing partner, drawing a minimal salary. On paper, you'll be asset-rich but cash-poor, buried in debt from the renovation loan. The court will see a man struggling to keep a new, high-risk project afloat. They won't be able to touch the building itself. It was a perfect design. I wasn't hiding assets. I was building a new one, a tangible, physical structure that would secure my future long after the dust settled. I drafted an email to our firm's lawyer, Brian Spencer, to set up a meeting. After Clara left, I showered and went to bed, expecting a sleepless night, but I passed out as soon as my head hit the pillow, exhausted but with a clear purpose. The next morning, a message from Eva was on my phone. "You didn't say you'd landed. Is everything okay in Portland?" I typed back, feeling nothing. Sorry. Planning went late, then I crashed. It's all coming together. Should be back Thursday. The reply was instant. Okay. See you then. Love you. XX. I couldn't bring myself to respond. I just deleted the message. Clara knocked on my hotel room door a little after 8. Breakfast, she said, and I followed her to a diner down the street. As we ate bacon and pancakes, a part of me couldn't understand how I was functioning as if my world hadn't imploded. But as an architect, I knew. When a structure fails, you don't stare at the rubble. You focus on the next step of the plan. Brian Spencer called, Clara said, pulling me back to the present. He can see us at 10. We can hit the bank first, cash out your $401k, and arrange the home equity line of credit. I get consolidating the funds, I said, but there's still a paper trail. Can't the court just order me to pay her half of what I liquidated? Clara grinned, a rare predatory expression. Only if you still have it. That's where the beauty of a high-risk construction project comes in. You won't have cash. You'll have rebar, concrete, and demolition permits. You'll be drowning in debt to the bank for the construction loan. By the time this gets to court, you'll be a broke architect taking a massive gamble. Technically, with her PR salary, she'll earn more than you. Diana might even get you alimony. When do the DNA results come in? She asked. Sometime today, I said, picking up my phone. I clicked the link the lab had sent. The page started to load, but then I put the phone down on the diner table, the loading screen a spinning circle of dread. I'm not sure I'm ready for that inspection report yet, I said. Can I? Clara asked. I pushed the phone towards her. She picked it up, her expression unreadable as she watched the screen. I studied her face for any micro fissure, any sign of the structural report she was about to deliver. After a moment, she looked up. The results aren't posted yet, she said. Tracking data says they should be available within the next 12 hours. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. A temporary stay of execution. Let's go, Clara said, standing up. The bank is open. Liquidating my financial life took surprisingly little time. Freeing up the equity in the house and cashing out my $401k was a matter of signatures. I closed every savings account, including the college funds I had so carefully built for the children, and transferred everything into a single new account under my name. The only one I left untouched was the joint checking account we used for daily expenses. It held less than $10,000, a calculated pittance. Our meeting with my firm's lawyer, Brian Spencer, introduced an unexpected complication, or rather, a hidden load-bearing wall I had forgotten about. When we outlined our plan to pour my capital into a new real estate project, he held up a hand. You're forgetting one thing, Alex, he said. Your prenuptial agreement. I have a prenup? I was genuinely surprised. A condition of the partnership agreement when you founded the firm, he reminded me. All partners were required to have one. It protects the company's assets from divorce proceedings. It stipulates that your shares in the architectural firm are non-marital property. Clara and I exchanged a look. This changed the blueprint entirely. So, my plan to invest in a separate real estate LLC. I started. It's a good plan, Brian said, but we can make it better. The prenup protects the firm, but your 401k and the equity from your home are still vulnerable. So, let's not build a new separate structure. Let's reinforce the one that's already protected. He leaned forward. Use the equity and your 401k to invest back into your own company. Buy out one of your partners. I know Robert has been hinting he wants to cash out. You'll need a loan from the firm's pension fund to cover the difference, which means your official salary will be drastically reduced to cover the payments. When you're assessed for assets, you'll be the majority owner of a protected company, but your personal income will be less than Eva's. Your credit will take a hit when the bank forecloses on your house, but she won't get a dime of the business. Everything will be tied to the company, sacrosanct. What will I live on? I asked. If my salary is just servicing a loan, we'll cross that bridge, he said. And don't forget Diana's part of the plan. I'm willing to bet the settlement from the lawsuit against her company will be more than enough to pay off that loan. And that's before we even get to recovering child support expenses from the biological father, should it come to that. He paused. Have you decided what you'll do if they're not yours? I don't know, I said honestly. It's a variable I can't design around until I have the data. Could you contact Robert on my behalf? I asked. See if he's interested. I'm not sure I'm in the right headspace for that negotiation. He nodded. I'll call him. Leaving his office, I felt a surge of relief. A new, stronger blueprint was taking shape. But then I remembered why we were drawing these plans, and a hollow emptiness opened up in my chest. We were back at the diner for lunch when I dared to look at my phone again. The dread returned. Once more, I could only bring myself to click the link before handing the phone to Clara. I watched her face, waiting for the verdict that would tell me if the last 5 years of my life had been a masterpiece of design or a catastrophic failure. Her expression softened, and her voice was the most unbusinesslike I had ever heard it. Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry. She handed the phone back. I read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine. They had the same father, but it wasn't me. The structural failure was total. The foundation wasn't just cracked. It was non-existent. The entire building of my family was a lie, a beautiful facade with nothing behind it. And the rage I felt was seismic. She hadn't just passed these children off as mine. She had convinced me to get a vasectomy, a procedure that had permanently altered my own design, ensuring I could never build a family of my own. Alex, Clara's voice snapped me back. Now is not the time or place. Stay calm. We will get through this. I took a few deep breaths, suppressing the urge to bring the whole diner crashing down around me. I wanted to cause serious, physical, structural damage to someone. Clara, ever the professional, pulled herself together and led me out. Diana called, she said. She wants to see us. We headed to Diana's office. She looked grim. I have a preliminary report from the private investigator, she said, wasting no time. A man came to your house last night and stayed over. I have cameras installed, I said, my voice cold. I can swap the drives. The au pair is there, I remembered. I can't go back. I'm supposed to be in Portland. Diana checked her phone. The au pair is at the community play center with James and Sonia, she said. I'll have my PI keep an eye on her. Go. Now. Clara drove fast. 30 minutes later, we were at my house. It felt like a stranger's home, a site I was inspecting for flaws. I swapped the flash drives, did a quick walkthrough, and saw nothing out of place. We returned to Diana's office. We checked the drives. I refused to watch the one from the bedroom. I didn't need to see the demolition in progress. I just needed to identify the wrecking ball. And it was exactly who I suspected. As soon as he walked through the door, I knew. It was her boss, Marcus Vance. What almost broke me wasn't seeing him walk through the door. It wasn't even the fact that he had his own key, a clear sign of long-term access. It was what happened a second later. As Marcus Vance entered the house I had designed, my son, James, looked up from his toys. "Papa Marcus!" he exclaimed and ran to hug him. That was the moment the floor gave way. The carefully constructed compartments in my mind shattered, and I broke down right there in Diana's office. I couldn't watch anymore. I buried my face in my hands, the sound of my own ragged breathing filling my ears. For the first time ever, Clara hugged me, holding me together as the entire structure of my life came crashing down. It took a while, but eventually, I pulled myself together. The pain receded, leaving a cold, hard anger in its place. "What's next?" I asked, my voice raw. Diana was already on it. I have a copy of Eva's company employment terms. There's an anti-fraternization clause. Since Marcus is a senior executive, the company can't claim ignorance. We have a strong case. We explained Brian Spencer's revised plan, the prenup, buying out my partner, consolidating my assets into the firm. Diana's grim expression broke into a huge, predatory smile. She picked up the phone, got Brian on the line, and had him email over a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "This is just perfect," she said, reading it. "Throw away everything I said before. Your lawyer's plan is a masterpiece of defensive architecture. Buy out your partner. Pour everything you have into the firm, and it will be untouchable. We'll sue her company for breach of policy, sue him for alienation of affection, sue her for birth certificate fraud, and sue them both to recoup every cent spent on the children. The medical bills for the births alone will be a significant figure. It all depends on whether Robert wants to sell," I said. Clara drove me back to the hotel. I was about to collapse on the bed when there was a knock on the door. It was her. "Let's go," she said. "You can't stay here." "What? Why?" "Because you can't be alone right now," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You'll either start drinking or start breaking things. I need you functional. I need you where I can keep an eye on you." While she was talking, she was already gathering my few belongings. She took my hand and led me out of the room. "We're going to my house," she said. "I have a spare room." I had never been to Clara's house. It was a single-story modern design, clean lines, minimalist, a space as efficient and logical as she was. She showed me to a guest room. "Shower, change. Dinner in 30 minutes, she ordered. We ate in silence. The food was probably delicious, but I tasted nothing. My mind was a whirlpool of calculations and broken blueprints. I was on autopilot, my destination set, just executing the steps. Just as we finished eating, my phone rang. I flinched, but it wasn't Eva. It was Robert, my business partner. "Alex," he said. His voice was quiet. "Brian called me." A pause. "Is it true?" "She's cheating on me, Robert," I said, my voice wooden. "All this time." "And the kids?" he asked, his voice trailing off. "Neither of them are mine," I confirmed. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "So, you want to fortify the company," he finally said. He understood the partnership agreement better than I did. "I want to keep 5%, he said, "and stay on as a consulting architect. The rest is yours." "Okay," I said. "I'll have Brian draw up the papers." "Alex," he said after a moment, "I'm really sorry. I've been almost where you are now. It gets better. I promise." Only then did I remember his own bitter divorce years ago. He'd used the same prenup to protect his shares. He knew the drill. The next morning, Clara woke me with a cup of coffee. "Let's go," she said. "We have a lot to build today." Our first stop was Brian Spencer's office. He had the documents ready. The buyout of Robert's shares was completed in less than 30 minutes. I signed over everything: the liquidated funds from my home, my savings, my 401k. I signed the loan agreement against the company's pension plan. On paper, I was now over $1 million in debt, and my salary was cut in half to service the loan. I was the majority owner of a multi-million-dollar firm, but my personal finances were a wasteland. Then, we went to Diana's. I showed her the signed deal. She was delighted. "This is perfect," she said. "I'll draw up the divorce papers today, and we can file on Monday. We'll serve her, Marcus, and the company all at the same time. Where do you want her served?" "Where it will cause maximum structural damage to her public image," I said. Diana laughed. "We'll serve her at the office," she said. "Monday, 10 a.m. sharp." She looked at me. "So, what now?" I looked at Clara. she was running things. "We have 2 more stops," she said, "before you go back to the office and pretend you just got back from putting out a fire in Portland. Do you think you can hold it together at home until Monday?" "I don't know," I said. "Any good news?" She smiled at me. "Let's go get some." To my surprise, we pulled up to the medical center where I'd had my vasectomy 3 years ago. "What are we doing here?" I asked, my voice flat. My vasectomy, the procedure that had permanently altered my own blueprint, had been performed in this very building. "You wanted good news," Clara said simply. "Let's go." I followed her into the clinic. She handled the reception desk while I stood back, an observer in my own life. A few minutes later, Dr. Harrington, my doctor, came out and invited me into his office. I looked at Clara, who made no move to follow. "Please," I said, and she nodded, joining me. Dr. Harrington didn't comment on Clara's presence. He was our family doctor. He knew she wasn't my wife. But whatever he thought, he kept it professional. "Alex," he began, "I understand from your office manager that you had a question about the possibility of a vasectomy reversal." My eyes widened. "Is that possible?" I glanced at Clara. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "Yes, of course," Dr. Harrington said. "Given that your procedure was performed only 2 years ago, the success rate for a reversal is around 95%. The surgery is more complex than the original, but I'm confident you would be able to father children again." Tears welled in my eyes. The design wasn't permanently flawed. It could be restored. I still had a chance to build a family, a real one, on a new foundation. The cost of the surgery, which insurance wouldn't cover, was irrelevant. It was a small price to pay for the chance to rebuild. "Thank you, doctor," Clara said, standing up and taking the informational packet from him. "We'll be in touch." As she led me out of the clinic, she asked softly, "Is that good enough news?" On impulse, I hugged her, a genuine, grateful embrace. "Thank you," I said, my face buried in her hair for a moment. Then I realized what I was doing and quickly stepped back. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It's fine." We got into her car. "One more stop," she said, "then back to the office." I had been to Marcus Vance's house several times for corporate events. He and his wife Stephanie lived in an exclusive gated community just outside the city. The houses were large, ostentatious, the kind of architecture that prioritized impressive facades over structural integrity. "Why are we here?" I asked. Clara simply got out of the car. I followed. The security guard at the gate had already announced us, and Stephanie was waiting at the open door. "Alex," she greeted me. Her eyes filled with a sad understanding. "You must be Clara." "I am," Clara confirmed. "Come in," Stephanie said, leading us not into the grand living room but into a side office. It was clearly Marcus's domain, all dark wood, leather, and self-important awards on the wall. But she sat behind his large desk, taking the position of power, and gestured for us to sit opposite her. This was not a social call. "How can I help you?" she asked, her gaze fixed on me. I couldn't speak. The words were trapped behind a wall of grief and rage. Finally, I managed to get one question out. "Did you know?" Stephanie sighed, a sound heavy with years of suspicion. "No," she said. "I suspected, for years, but I could never find any proof. Nothing I could take to a lawyer. He was always so careful. I hired private investigators, checked his phones, his emails. I even confronted him, but he was a master of gaslighting. He convinced me I was paranoid, insecure. Honestly, Alex, if I had had one shred of concrete evidence, I would have come to you. But I couldn't destroy what looked like a happy marriage based on my suspicions alone." She paused. "What are you going to do?" I hesitated. Could I trust my enemy's wife with our battle plans? But looking at her, I saw not an enemy, but another victim of the same flawed design. The question is, I said, turning her words back on her, what are you going to do? Now you have proof. A slight, cold smile touched her lips. I understand, she said, and I don't blame you for being cautious. If you have the name of a good divorce lawyer, I'd appreciate it. Clara took a business card from her purse, Diana's card, and handed it to her. Thank you, Stephanie said, glancing at the card. Will a week be enough time for you to act? I nodded. Excellent, she said, standing up. The meeting was over. As we left, she gave me a quick, formal hug. Again, I am so sorry, she said. Then she looked at Clara. Look after him. He deserves better than this. We returned to the office, and I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work, pretending I was just back from Portland. At the end of the day, Clara knocked, said her goodnights, her professional mask firmly back in place. I felt a strange sense of loss. For a moment, I'd felt a connection, a partnership. Now, she was just my office manager again. I stayed late, catching up on emails. A message from Eva arrived around 8 p.m. What time will you be home? Probably another hour or two, I typed back. Need to finish up some things from the trip. Okay, I'll probably be asleep. Have to be up early. Love you. XX. I couldn't bring myself to reply. When I finally got home, the house was dark. I looked in on Sonia and James, their small forms asleep in their beds. They looked like perfect, beautiful designs. A sob rose in my chest, and I had to retreat to the bathroom, choking it back. How could I let Caroline see me crying over children that weren't even mine? They were just more evidence of her infidelity, living, breathing proof that the entire structure of my life was a lie. I still didn't know what to do about them. How could I abandon them? But how could I stay? For now, the decision would have to wait. The demolition of my old life had to be completed first. I had no legal responsibility to them, but my heart hadn't received that memo. How could I just abandon them? Less than 48 hours ago, they were the twin pillars of my life's design, my flesh and blood. Now, they were just more evidence of my wife's deep-seated betrayal. I decided to table that decision. An architect doesn't decide on the interior finishes while the foundation is still crumbling. For now, I had to focus on the demolition. I went to bed, careful not to wake Eva. When I woke the next morning, she was already gone. I went down to the kitchen and saw the au pair feeding the children. I looked at her, and a cold wave of anger washed over me. She had to have known. She saw Marcus Vance come and go. Did she know the children weren't mine? Did she help create the fiction, tucking them in and saying goodnight to Papa Marcus, just as she did with me? My mind, a place usually filled with clean lines and logical structures, was suddenly flooded with ugly, chaotic scenarios. I shook my head, forcing the thoughts away. My anger was misdirected. She was just a small component in a much larger, flawed system. My fight was with the lead architect of this disaster, not with the contractors. I went to work. When I arrived, Clara was already there, all business, as if the past few days of emotional triage had never happened. She brought me my morning coffee, just as she had every day for the past 9 years. But this time, she brought one for herself too, and sat down on the other side of my desk. This was new. Marketing, I asked, gesturing to her coffee. Since when are you part of the marketing team? A wicked grin spread across her face. Since we started designing the marketing campaign for Eva Vance, she said. It's the last phase of Diana's strategy. We need to control the narrative. I didn't understand. What do you mean, tell everyone? Exactly that, Clara said. Her friends, her family, her professional network, everyone she interacts with needs to know the truth about the person she is and the things she has done. That won't reflect well on me, I argued. I'll be a laughingstock. The cuckolded architect who couldn't even design his own family, raising another man's children. You have to tell your story, Alex, she insisted. Because if you don't, Eva will. And believe me, her version will be a masterpiece of public relations. You won't be the ignorant victim. You'll be the abusive, controlling husband. When we serve her with the divorce papers, she'll respond with a full-scale media assault. We have to launch our campaign first, control the message, and you control the outcome. She was right. Eva was a professional at shaping perceptions. I had to preempt her. Clara had already assembled the media package. It was a meticulously organized digital portfolio containing all the evidence. The private investigator's report, a copy of the DNA analysis proving I was not the father, and copies of the video files from my house, including the one of James greeting Marcus Vance. It even included the bedroom footage, which I had refused to watch. Later that morning, an email from Diana arrived. Stephanie, Marcus's wife, had provided a DNA sample from one of his hairbrushes. Diana had it cross-referenced. The results were conclusive. Marcus Vance was the biological father of both children. I stared at the report. Suddenly, the word children felt foreign. They were no longer mine. They were his. A project I had poured my heart into, only to discover the original architect was someone else entirely. We added this final, devastating report to the package. We prepared two versions, a full, unredacted version for immediate family, Eva's parents, my parents, her brother, and a slightly redacted electronic version for all of her LinkedIn and social media contacts. The physical packages were scheduled for courier delivery at 10 a.m. on Monday, the exact moment the demolition was set to begin. I just had to get through the weekend. As an architect, I solve problems with design. And the problem this weekend was the forced, performative intimacy of our weekend mornings. So, I designed a solution. It took me less than an hour to build a small, simple device. A timer, a battery, and a small motor with an offset weight. When activated, it would create a subtle, persistent vibration. On Friday night, after the au pair left, I slipped into Sonia's room and hid the device under her pillow, setting the timer for 6 a.m. the next day, the time we usually woke up. The vibration would wake her, she would come into our room, and our weekend ritual would be effectively neutralized. It worked perfectly. I was woken up Saturday morning by Sonia climbing into bed between us. No sex. I smiled to myself. I kept busy all day, methodically working through the list of household chores Eva had been nagging me about for months. When she commented on my sudden productivity, I simply said it was time they were done. On Saturday night, when she tried to initiate something, I feigned sleep. And on Sunday morning, my little device woke Sonia again. The problem was solved. We spent Sunday at the zoo. Throughout the day, there were moments when I looked at Eva, the woman I had loved, and the two children I had raised as my own, and the facade of my composure almost cracked. I bit the inside of my cheek until it bled. The physical pain, a welcome distraction from the emotional agony. But I made it through. On Monday morning, I was ready. I told Eva I was working from home. I wanted to be on site for the demolition. She left for work at her usual time. I watched her car pull out of the garage. It was 8:15 a.m. The countdown had begun. A little after 9, Clara arrived, the final member of my demolition crew. I was surprised to see Clara at my door, but I let her in. For the first time since I'd known her, I made coffee for her. At 9:30 a.m., we conference called Diana. "Alex," Diana said, her voice crisp, "this is your last chance to halt the demolition. I'm not advising it, but if you've had a change of heart, now is the time." "No," I said, without a trace of doubt. "Proceed." "Then I'll see you on the other side," she replied, and the line went dead. Everything was in motion. I watched my email, waiting for the delivery confirmations from the courier service. At exactly 10 a.m., the first one arrived, the second at 10:03, the third at 10:05. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. "Alex, what is happening?" she asked, her voice panicked. Did you read the architectural report I sent? I asked. Yes, but then you know as much as I do, I said, my voice like ice. Eva has been lying to me for our entire marriage. Her boss is the father of the children. I'm divorcing her. Alex, you can't just… Mom, I have to go. I have other calls. I hung up. It rang again immediately. This time, it was Eva. I let it go to voicemail. A text appeared. We need to talk. Then another. I'm coming home now. Eva's on her way, I told Clara. I'll step aside, she said, starting to get up. I wanted to ask her to stay, to be the structural support I desperately needed, but I didn't know how. I just looked at her. Call me, she said, understanding everything. After, she left. 20 minutes later, I heard her car skid to a halt in the driveway. She didn't even bother with the garage. She burst into my office and sat opposite me. Alex, she began, her PR-trained voice attempting a tone of reasonable concern. Not interested, I interrupted, my voice flat. This meeting is not a negotiation. It is a notification. You don't even want to hear. No, I said, cutting her off. I don't want to hear another word from your mouth. You built a lie that spanned 9 years. You presented another man's children as mine. And you convinced me to get a vasectomy, a permanent structural alteration, so you could continue your project with Papa Marcus's without any risk. At the mention of his name, her eyes widened. So no, Eva, I continued, my voice dangerously quiet. I don't care what you have to say. My lawyer's business card is in the package you were served. If you have something you think I should know, you can bill her for the time to tell her. She can then bill me. What about the children? She asked, her voice trembling. What children? I answered. I don't have children. According to the blueprints you designed, I can never have them. I would ask you why you did this, but I'm not interested in another one of your carefully crafted narratives. Your excuses are irrelevant. I stood up. This project is over. I called the au pair into the room. You're fired, I said. Leave, immediately. What? Why? She stammered. Because you were a co-conspirator, I said, pointing at Eva. You knew she was sleeping with her boss. You knew the children called him Papa Marcus. I have it all on video. Get out. Alex, you can't fire her! I pay her salary! Eva protested. Fine, I said calmly. I've already contacted the agency and informed them of your complicity in this fraud. They've agreed to waive any legal action against their company if they remove you from their registry. So, if Eva wants to keep you, she'll have to handle your taxes, insurance, and pension herself. But I suspect finding another job will be difficult. Agencies talk. The au pair's face went white. She turned and fled. Did you have to do that? Eva cried. You're talking again, I said. I told you I'm not interested. What I want is for you to get your things, take his kids, and get out of my house. This is my house too. According to the deed, no, I said. It's registered in my name only. So until a court rules otherwise, this site is condemned. Get out. I didn't shout, but my voice carried the weight of a collapsing building. James entered the room. Mommy? He said. Sonia fell. Eva, her face a mask of stunned disbelief, tears streaming down her cheeks, went to her daughter. I closed my office door and waited. A few minutes later, she returned, holding Sonia. Aren't you even going to say goodbye? Goodbye to whom? I said, without looking up. She is not my daughter. He is not my son. Take them to their father and let him take care of his own creations. They have nothing to do with me. Alex, get out. I heard the front door close. A few minutes later, her car engine started. She was gone. I released a breath I'd been holding for what felt like an eternity and completely shattered. I didn't hear my office door open, and I jumped when a pair of arms wrapped around me. I looked up and saw Clara. She pulled me to her and held me as I sobbed, the ruins of 9 years crashing down around me. I just threw it all away. I choked out after a long time. My marriage, my children, my life. Clara took charge again. "Let's go," she said. "Diana says Eva will get an emergency order to occupy the house within hours because of the children. It's legally considered the matrimonial home. She'll be back. Do you really want to give her the satisfaction of throwing you out of your own house?" We gathered my clothes and important documents. As I loaded my car, I had no idea where I was going. We drove to the office first. Later that day, Diana called. As predicted, Eva had gotten the order, plus a restraining order against me. I was now legally barred from my own project site. I didn't understand what was happening until I realized Clara was driving me back to her house. All my things were already in her spare room, my papers neatly stacked in her home office. A week passed in a blur. We'd work all day, then go back to her house, eat, and I'd sleep. She was still all business, a perfect professional, except for the quiet way she made me coffee every morning. And that one hug, the one that held me together when I was ready to fall apart. On Monday morning, we began the demolition. Our first meeting was with the lawyers for Eva's PR firm. Diana, my lawyer, grinned like a Cheshire cat. Their lead counsel was all business. "What is it going to take to make this go away?" he asked. "Immediate and permanent dismissal of Senior Vice President Marcus Vance with full forfeiture of his pension," Diana replied coolly. "A guaranteed 3-year contract for Eva, so she can't claim we ruined her career, and $1.5 million in damages." I barely listened as they negotiated. In the end, they agreed. Vance was out. Eva was protected. And I would receive $750,000, enough to pay off a significant portion of the pension fund loan I'd taken to secure my company. The next meeting was with Marcus Vance's personal lawyers. I left their office $500,000 richer. I now had enough to completely repay the loan and still have capital left over. The final meeting of the day was with Eva and her lawyer. She was in the room but wouldn't look at me. Clara was by my side, a silent, solid presence. "This divorce petition is simply ridiculous," Eva's lawyer began. "Your client is the CEO of a firm worth an estimated $20 million. Not to mention—" "Let me stop you there," Diana said, sliding a thick binder across the table. "According to the prenuptial agreement, the firm is non-marital property. My client recently made a significant capital investment in his company to buy out a partner, which required him to liquidate his 401k, leverage his home equity, and take out a substantial loan. His salary is now drastically reduced. In fact, he now earns less than your client. We will be asking the court for alimony." "What about the children?" her lawyer countered. "There is DNA evidence that the children are not his," Diana said, her voice like flint. She deliberately falsified birth records with intent to defraud. "Furthermore, we are seeking damages for aggravated assault, as she knowingly persuaded him to undergo surgical sterilization under the false belief that he was their father." She leaned forward. "The alternative is this. Your client signs the divorce papers as they are. She will receive half of the joint checking account, which currently has a balance of $9,443.15. She packs her things and leaves the marital home. That is the deal." The lawyer looked at the papers, at the prenup, and then at Eva. For the first time, she looked at me. "Alex, please," she whispered. 9 years, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. "You lied to me every single day for 9 years. You have nothing to say that I want to hear." She looked at her lawyer and nodded. She signed the papers. I wasn't there when she moved out. I just received a letter from her lawyer stating the restraining order had been lifted. The house was mine again. I thought about moving back, but the design was tainted. Instead, I put it on the market. 2 months passed, and I was still living in Clara's spare room. Eva moved in with her parents, who, despite all the evidence, had firmly taken her side. It was no loss. Then came the news about Marcus Vance. Stephanie, his wife, didn't shoot him. Her revenge was far more elegant, more architectural. Armed with the evidence I'd provided, she found several other women in the company whom Marcus had harassed or assaulted over the years. Together, they filed a massive class action lawsuit against the firm for fostering a toxic and predatory work environment. The story hit the major news outlets. The company's stock plummeted. The board cleaned house. Marcus Vance was not just fired, he was financially and professionally obliterated, his name becoming synonymous with corporate sleaze. I heard he was facing criminal charges as well. I was sitting at my desk at work when Clara knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. "Did you see the news about Vance?" she asked. A huge grin spread across my face. I couldn't stop it. "Nothing could have happened to a nicer guy," I said finally. Clara laughed. "By the way," she said, placing an official-looking envelope on my desk, "this just arrived." I looked at it. We both knew what it was. The final divorce decree. I opened it. "It's over," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "I'm finally a free man." "Finally," Clara said. Then she did something I never expected. She leaned over my desk and kissed me. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was a full, passionate kiss that sent a jolt through my entire system. When she finally pulled away, I was breathless. She giggled, looking down at my obvious excitement. "For 9 years," she said, her voice soft, "I've watched you. You are the most decent, honorable man I have ever met. You never once looked at me the wrong way, never made an inappropriate comment, not even when your partner was a walking lawsuit. I defended you then, and I've been waiting for you for 9 years. And now, you're free." She looked me straight in the eye. "I know you respect me, Alex, and respect is a kind of love. We're a great team. Give me a chance to show you that not all women are liars." I was stunned. I thought back on all the years, her unwavering loyalty, her quiet competence, the way she had stepped in and project managed the demolition of my old life and the construction of my new one. I realized then that while I was building a life with Eva, a real, solid foundation had been forming right here in my own office with Clara. A structure built on trust and mutual respect. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes for the first time. "How many?" I asked. She looked puzzled. "How many what?" "Children," I said. "How many children should we design?"